Hello.
Shit. Oh, goodness. Hello.
Hi. Thank you once again for joining. We're so happy to have you.
Pleasure.
Yes. So my name is Ife Dolapo. I'm from Nigeria, like I mentioned earlier. And you can call me Ife, IFE for short. So yeah, I'll be moderating the session today. But first I'll just go ahead to introduce Lynn. Please let me know if you can see my screen.
Yeah, it's on.
Okay. All right. So hello everyone. Thank you once again for joining. So in a few minutes, I'll just go ahead to introduce Lynn. Lynn is a community of MBA enthusiasts, students, MBA applicants, alumni from Africa, and basically people that are leveraging their MBAs for a more politically inclusive Africa, right? And it's our belief that we owe it to the future generation, to form an alliance of tomorrow's IWAT Africans who will collectively improve the conditions in Africa. So right now, what we are doing is we are focusing on increasing Africans' representation in global MBA programs, right? And that's what we do currently at Lane. Disclaimer, we are not an MBA admission service. We are not going to help you to, put your MBA application together or anything like that. We're just giving you the support you would need to basically navigate the MBA application process. And we're a community of African leaders with an MBA. A few people have asked, are we a school or anything like that? No, we're just like a community of MBAs from Africa, like I mentioned. Yeah, so and to achieve our goal, which is to increase Africans' representation in global MBA programs, we have several initiatives. One of them is this event that we have today, the MBA for Africa event. And this year we introduced the regional part of it, which is basically to target people from Eastern Africa, Southern Africa, Francophone Africa, and to basically tell them what the MBA program is about and give them specialized insights into the application process from a regional aspect for them. So yeah, we also have other initiatives like the LAMP initiative, which is basically a mentorship program where we pair MBA students, candidates, and alumni with MBA applicants that have similar profiles, just with someone that is going to basically guide them through the process. So yeah, we have several initiatives like that, and this is one of them. And so far, Lane has been able to we've been able to, support many of our members into several schools in the US and Canada, like Darden, Torque, Tepa, Harvard, many schools like you can see on the screen. So yeah, and today we have the MBA for Southern Africa event. And you can expect to get tips and insights from MBA candidates and alumni like Tumi and Rumbi. They'll be sharing their experiences through the MBA application process and even after also. So yeah, that's what we are hoping to achieve in this event today. And so I'll talk about Lane and the resources we have. We have a group, right? Like I mentioned, there's a community. So there's a group you can join, which is full of people who are also applying to MBAs like you, or people who have done that already, alumni, candidates, and things like that. We also have several resources to answer many of your questions. We have podcasts. We have our YouTube channel, City of Lane. You can go to our social media. The link in bio has all of those information. Yeah, so someone in the comments is going to share many of these links with you if you want to, join the community or the current class, our current cohorts to receive and to benefit from all of these events. Yeah, so that's it. Towards the end of the event, we're going to have a question and answer section. So if you have questions, please just prepare it ahead. You can start to drop them in the chat as the event is going on. Yeah, and we hope to answer your questions. All right. Thank you very much. So first I would say Rumbi and Tumi, I would like you to introduce yourselves. Tell us about your background. how you got to know about the MBA application process, your nationality. Just give us a brief overview of who you are and introduce yourself. I think you can go first to me.
Okay, I'll just go first. So my name is Dumiti Sane and I'm from South Africa, Johannesburg to be specific. And how I got to know about just the MBA program, I think I'd been working in banking. So funny enough, I did articles with Rumbi a few years ago. So, I'm a chartered accountant from KPMG. And then after that, I went into banking and I got lucky that some of my colleagues, a lot of my colleagues in one of my jobs were MBAs. They'd done their MBAs in the US. And that's how I really got familiar with just the option of doing an MBA. And I think they were some of my mentors and like my biggest supporters in pursuing this MBA process. And just the why MBA, I think Wall Street for me has always been a dream. So that was something that I wanted to attain, and like the MBA was a good way to pivot into that. And I also wanted an opportunity to work on a few of my own personal projects. And I think, especially in second year, first year of the MBA is a bit crazy, but in second year, that's something that I'm pursuing right now. So I'm trying to balance sort of all those goals right now. So for me, it was just to broaden my perspective and broaden my scope as well and get a bit of developed market experience within finance.
Okay. Thank you for sharing. That is good to learn about you. All right, so Rumbi.
Sorry guys, I'm eating. I haven't eaten the whole day, so that's why I'm
It's fine.
I'm also catching the video. Hi everyone. Hi to me. Great to see you. So my name is Ruby Derera. I just finished my MBA at Columbia Business School. Recently I graduated with the class of 2024. I am a Zimbabwean, born and raised, moved to South Africa when I was 18. Studied accounting science, also a chartered accountant as to me. Started off with KPMG, moved on to Barclays. And I guess the reason for me to do the MBA, I always wanted to come to the US. My dream was to be an investor. And I felt like because of the developed and deep markets in the US made sense. And I knew quite a number of Zimbabweans who are still on Wall Street. And so chose to come to Columbia because it's a finance school, and currently working as an investment analyst at a credit hedge fund called Encourage Capital Advisors. And so looking forward to meeting you guys.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay, so I believe we probably have like different categories of people joining today. We might have people who don't even know how to get started with the MBA process. They just have heard about it. Maybe they're even trying to understand what the process is about. And we might have people who have started, maybe they're trying to write their GRE, their GMAT. And so just just briefly, right, to me, how would you advise someone who doesn't even know if the MBA is a good idea for them? So maybe you can just tell them what an MBA is and what the requirement is, how it is different from just the specialized master's degree. Do you understand? So yeah, so maybe you can start from there.
Okay, so an MBA, I hope I do it justice, but Rumbi, please jump in.
Okay.
So an MBA is a master's degree in business administration. So it would be a bit more broader than doing like, I don't know, a master's in finance or a master's in economics, where you'd focus specifically on that. And I think with the MBA, the focus is to be like a well-rounded business person. So, you're taking finance classes, you're taking economics, you're taking more like management and managing people type classes. So it's very broad in terms of what you study. For my school specifically, so I'm a second year at Darden, and for my school specifically, in second year you can sort of like pick your specialization, so you can mix and match your electives according to your needs and whatever it is that you're planning for your career.
Yeah.
Then what was the other part of your question?
Yes. What did you say?
Okay. No, I was asking if that addresses your question.
Yes, it does actually. Yes, it does. Thank you for that. Okay, so basically like Sumi said, an MBA is broad, right? And like general management, you get general management overview and, you know, just more insight into leadership and things like that. And she also mentioned that in the second year, you can have the option to specialize if you want and pick your courses and electives according to, you know, your needs and what you want. Okay, so yeah, that basically answers it. Yeah, so for someone who is trying to define their why and who is just trying to get started, Rumbi, what's like the first steps you would advise someone to take? You know, they've decided, okay, I want to get an MBA. So what am I supposed to do now?
Okay. I think because my why, to be very honest, is because I wanted a break from work. But I think it's like that's a very important question because it's a very expensive investment, but very worthwhile. So I think I would start thinking about, okay, what do you want to do? What's your long-term goal? And then working backwards and ensuring that your your background or your prior experience and current experience matches, you get transferable skills from that. And then I think your why also would inform the school that you want to the school that you're going to select, because like for example, some schools are very good at entrepreneurship, some schools are known for finance, although I feel like now companies are trying their best to diversify that school, like where they recruit from. But I think just to give yourself an advantage, just so for example, if you want to do finance, go to a finance school where there's a big alarm on Wall Street, because Tumi will give you tips on investment banking. Like it's, you know, the way people recruit here is very different. There's a lot of networking.
Yeah.
So I would say like knowing your why is very important. Like what do you want to achieve? How do you get there? And your short-term goal, I would say also should make sense. So for example, even though I knew that I wanted to be an investor, to be fair, I wanted to go into private equity. I didn't know anything about credit. I was just fortunate to go into credit, and now I'm focused on that. I did not write that, oh, I want to come here and go into credit, because you'll find that they really like people with the 2 years analyst experience on investment banking. So like understanding that it must make sense to the admissions when they read your essays that, okay, if this person comes, we will put them in banking or in consulting, which is your short-term goal, and then have a long-term goal. I mean, no one ever will go back to your essay and say, oh, but she said she wanted to do that. But your short-term goal specifically should make sense.
Yeah.
And your background. I mean, it should be easier for an admission to see that, okay, this person was doing this, so they have the transferable skills, or yeah, that's how I would put it.
Okay, thank you. So basically, they should start by defining their why, having like a solid reason, long-term, short-term goal, defining it like really. All right, thank you very much for that. And so you already touched briefly on one of the factors to consider when trying to decide on school to apply to, right? Which is depending on your goals, right? So let's say you're trying to get into finance, it's just great to, you know, apply to schools that have that strong suits or things like that. Yeah, so to me, what are some other factors you would say to consider, or like the most important in deciding what schools to apply to?
So I was part of the LAMP cohort of what, was it 2023? But was it 22 or 23? But anyway, I was in LAMP. And when I started in LAMP, I started with I took that Financial Times top 20 ranking. And I was just like, okay, we're going to go for the top 5 and see where we land. And I think that's how everyone starts. And I know my mentors and some of the people I'd spoken to were like, you know, it's fine to start that way, but really start from the end, like all the things Ruby mentioned about, like, what are your goals? What makes sense for you? What school's going to help you get there?
Yeah.
So when I started, like, from that perspective, my list definitely changed quite a bit. And I think the other thing you need to take into account is fit. So for instance, like I had one school that was on my list that I really wanted. But as I tried to talk to people that were current students and alums, it was just very difficult to access them. They weren't really accessible. So I thought about, you know, what would that mean from a day-to-day perspective if I'm on campus and people aren't accessible right now? And the school that I ended up in, I think one of the key things about Darden specifically was like, There were people who I was just a stranger on the internet basically to them, but they were still willing to help me through my process. And like there's a very big sense of community here, which is what I like. And it's a small town, like relatively small class, because it's only 350 people. And that's what worked better for my needs right now. So I think it's also to think about like internally, what do you want and what resonates with you more? Because some people love big schools, some people, prefer small schools. Like all of those things you need to think about. And also like the outcomes of the school is very important and how it aligns to your goals. So for instance, you wouldn't go to a finance school if all you want to do is entrepreneurship, because you might not have like entrepreneurship programs and other type of support systems to help you with your goal. And it might be a bit of a harder push to do these things, in your spare time in between class and whatever else. So it's very important to think about all those things.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for that. So you mentioned that you were trying to speak with, there was a school you were trying to speak with some of the students or maybe reach out to them, and it was difficult, right? And so that means would you say that's an important factor? Like, do you have to network with students, with alumni before you apply to those schools? And let's say you decide, okay, I want to do this. What's the best approach? How do I go about reaching those people? Rumbi, maybe you can take that, or if you want to, yeah.
I'll give it to Rumbi.
Okay.
You should answer it too. Look, my MBA journey was long, and I think because I didn't have a lot of information, but my MBA application journey. But I would say that so for example, Columbia is very big on networking, like reaching out to people, current students and stuff. I don't think there's a big alarm in South Africa, to be honest, but they do come for the admissions here always goes to Johannesburg, and I think Cape Town in Southern Africa for information sessions. So looking at the websites, right, attending those information sessions. I think there was an alarm actually from Zimbabwe when I was still in South Africa. She introduced me to the admissions. And at that time, I didn't know how important that was, right? And so I had the opportunity to have coffee with her, but like, I think I was busy with work or something like that. Then I was like, oh, then I had to meet a deadline at work. So I ended up not going. And I feel that was, I didn't get in that year. And I think that if I had the coffee chat, because then I'm like, oh, I'm reading Rumbi's, look, I don't know anything about admissions, but I'm just saying from what I've heard, it's important to touch base with admissions. Like you have to be proactive, talk to alarms, because in the application, there's actually a space where you're like, oh, who have you spoken to? What events have you attended? Sometimes people like fly in and stuff, like especially like just to do like a school visit or whatever. So I think it's important to, like, you could just reach out to people on LinkedIn as well.
On LinkedIn. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So you can just, check through LinkedIn, check the schools, alumni, reach out to people you think their profiles are interested. Yes, so thank you for that, Rumbi. So you mentioned attending events, right? There are physical events happening. I know there's one happening very soon in South Africa, I think Johannesburg and some other African cities, right? So within the Lane community, we share all those events. So that's one reason why you need to join the community. Yeah, so thank you. So going into the application process itself, as a South African, to me, are there some challenges, like maybe unique challenges you faced, maybe based on converting your transcript to something that the schools in the US, schools that are not in South Africa would understand, or maybe things around getting your recommenders to understand what you're trying to achieve, or just are there unique challenges around being a South African applying to, global MBA programs that you can touch on?
I think my biggest challenge was just not having a community of people to ask questions to, like that were local, because there's so many things. I remember going into this process think, oh, I write so well, my essays are going to be great. But like, you realize, but then you realize that like there's a very specific way to like communicate things. Because remember, if you say, oh, I worked at Standard Bank, someone in the US has no context, no clue, like why that's impressive or not impressive or things like that. So like
Mhm.
there's a way to articulate yourself to bring those things across. And unless you have someone who's been through the process, like I personally, I did not know how to articulate those things well. So I think you definitely need a community. So that was something that, that was a bit of a struggle if you back home. What else was a struggle? I think in terms of tests and transcripts and that sort of thing, my school was pretty good with like getting me the transcripts that I needed and getting it in the right form. So that wasn't necessarily a struggle,
Okay.
but definitely crafting your application and even just school selection, having someone who has context around your background
Mm.
and context around where you come from and what you're trying to achieve. That's really hard. So that was probably the biggest challenge.
Mm. Okay. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, so Rumbi, from your own perspective and from your background, right, are there unique challenges you experienced in the application process that you can touch on?
Girl, I experienced a lot. Just I think for me, this was a very different application process because when I went to WITS, right, or the University of Witwatersrand in South Africa, I just submitted my A-level results. I didn't write no essay. I didn't have an interview or anything. So to me, it felt like, and even like with recruiting, especially in the US, as I said, you can be like the best in terms of technical skills or whatever, but if you can't really articulate your story
Yeah.
and also like the whole self-promotion thing, I think it's very unique to the US and different from South Africa. I think it's very big here. But for me, it was like actually writing that story, like it must make sense. And I'm not a good writer, like to me. So I actually had a consultant. I ended up like getting like several consultants. And as to me said, like not knowing I think the one of the biggest challenges in Southern Africa is we don't have a big community. I think if you compare to West Africa, for example, of people who have pursued MBAs in the US, or maybe we're not as, what's the word? We don't have like a tight, neat, I don't know. But like just to have people to say, hey, you need to write this, or this is how you need to like position yourself. I found that to be extremely challenging. So I think, like groups like Lane, the city of Lane, sorry,
Yeah.
are very
Fine.
important. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, thank you for sharing that. So like you both mentioned, so it shows that joining a community, like having a community of people that can put you through, answer your questions is very important. And that's why we have Lean. And so, yeah, so it's just great that you really take advantage of being in the community, ask your questions, feel free to approach people, even your fellow applicants. They might know, where you can get waiver, how to do certain things because you are doing it together, right? Yeah, so thank you for sharing that. So I wanted us to touch on the standardized tests, GMAT, GRE. I know that for many people, it's usually like a big challenge. So yeah, from your perspective to me, I don't know if it's a big challenge for South Africans. It's possible that people from your side just S the GRE and the GMAT very easily. So yeah, do you want to touch on how important the standardized tests are for the application process? Can I, if I studied certain courses, can I choose to waive it? Is it important? Can I, and how helpful is it basically? And if you have some tips on how to approach it and how to just, ace it very easily, please share those.
I wish my one was easy. It was. It definitely wasn't easy.
Mm,
But just from the waiver perspective, like I got some waivers from some of my schools, and that was based on having like a quants heavy background
mm,
professionally. So I don't know if schools are still offering that now because that was off the back of 2020. But you just have to write an essay and explain what your background is and why it was quants heavy and sort of like some of the work that you did. And that's what worked for me to get a waiver for some of my schools. But in terms of the standardized test, I think the one thing I could have done better, because I did it on my own, and I think it would have been better if, I was attending classes or some sort of support group to help me with the actual studying, because it's very different. Like we don't write tests like this at home. We don't do this type of like standardized situation where there's like a way of answering questions, like a very particular way you need to approach problems.
Mm,
And even with like some of the maths, I think it's not necessarily straightforward because I feel like back home it was more like, here's the equation, solve the equation. Whereas with like these standardized tests, it's a whole story. And then it's like, here's the story. What do you need to do? Then you need to figure out, oh, there's an equation I need to solve. So it's very different. I wish I had attended some sort of classes or support from someone to get it done. But I wish I had a tip on how to get this done properly because I just kept rewriting until I was happy with my score. And it's okay. And I think it's okay to rewrite. I think some
yeah.
people get, I think there's a mental block, if you don't get that right score in the beginning, people think, it's over. But sometimes you're just writing the wrong test for your needs. Like I started off with GMAT.
Okay.
And I was really struggling with the way like some of the mathematical questions were phrased and stuff. But then I moved to GRE and the phrasing was a bit better and more in tune with what I was used to. So then I stuck with the GRE and I did much better in that test than in the GMAT.
Okay. It's good to hear that. Thanks for sharing your experience with us. Okay, so Rumbi, did you write any of the standardized tests? And can you just let us know, do you think getting a waiver, do you think it affects your application negatively or maybe positively in any way? And yeah, do you have generally tips for people who are trying to juggle a full-time job with actually preparing for these exams in, where they are? Can you touch on that?
Yeah. So I wrote 9 exams between 2016 and like 2020, I think. I wrote 5 GMATs,
Oh,
3
wow.
GREs, 1 what's this? I'm forgetting now the one that I
Is it
actually used to get an executive assessment. Yeah, so that's like a
Okay.
mini GMAT. Yeah, I think for me, my issue was the math was fine. The verbal was just not for me. And as Tumi said, I think knowing the exam that is right for you, I think by the time I got to the GRE, I was really tired, like mentally, I was done. I had a tutor from Manhattan Prep. I had a tutor from in South Africa as well, and it did not help. And I think just talking to people, someone was like, oh, try the executive. No, actually, I don't know who told me try the executive assessment. I reached out to Columbia. They said, yeah, they take it. And then I actually wrote the executive assessment and got the right score that I needed and applied. So I think I would say to, like, first of all, do your research, try out both exams, like, go to the website, inquire from the web, from the school itself, like, hey guys, like, what standardized test do you take? Try both. Try, I think, the GRE and the GMAT right from the bat, see which one works for you and stick it out. And don't try to like listen to people who say, like, for example, oh, like these sort of schools take GMAT. I mean, only or whatever, or when you're recruiting and whatever. Honestly, just it's about getting in, right? Like, so do the test that you are comfortable with, because I think, and I was like that as well, because like people with obviously with wrong information, people would say, oh, but if you do the GRE, then like people won't really, or you can't, or if you this executive assessment, you can't recruit for finance or whatever, and that is not true. So, and yes, there are like funds or whatever that will ask for GMAT, but I believe you can always explain that. So I would not be like, oh, so I can't do this because I won't be able to get this job or whatever. I would say the goal should be, I want to get in, which one works for me, let me stick with that. And if you can afford a tutor, do it. But like some of these tutors, like the one that I had for the year, I felt like it was a waste of time because my score wasn't changing, and he was like, I was paying him a lot of money, so it's a money business. I mean, it's a business as well, at the end of the day. So like, really just try the two first, see which one works for you, stick with that one down, buy the books and stuff, and just put aside maybe like 2 hours a day, then Saturday, like, write an exam and mark it on Sunday.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you for sharing that. And in terms of actually like knowing which one works for you, there's some practice tests you can take. online. I know you can get some for free on the GRE website. I'm not sure about GMAT, but yeah, you can just find some free practice tests to start with to know which one works for you, whether it's the GRE, the GMAT. And like both of them said, don't be scared to rewrite it. Like write it again till you, till you get what score you're trying to target. Yes, so I'd like us to touch on the application rounds. I know that schools usually have several application rounds, and I don't know if it's recent or new, but some schools have the early action even before the first round, right? Some have up to round 4. So from your perspective, to me, what round would you advise people applying from Southern Africa to apply into?
So I applied in round 2.
Okay.
And I mean, you can literally, if your application's good, right? Because they're
Mhm.
going to measure the quality of your application, you can get in. But what I wish I'd done, looking back now, is I wish I'd applied earlier, just to give me a bit more time to think about funding, a bit more time to think about whether or not I need to change my strategy for some schools, and a bit more time to renegotiate as well, because sometimes you can renegotiate your funding with some schools. But I think the later you apply, the tighter that deadline becomes, especially for when you have to do your admin at home and visas and stuff like that. So I'd say, I mean, it's always best to apply as soon as possible, but don't let that mean you're submitting a bad quality application though. Like always prioritize quality over the speed of your application. But if you can, apply as soon as possible so that you can access some opportunities that won't be available in round 3 or round 4.
Yeah, exactly. Rumbi, do you want to add to that?
I would just say, from my experience, and to me, you're right on that. I would just say if you can apply round 1 before everyone else, they don't know, especially from Southern Africa, because very few people. I mean, now the numbers are increasing, right? But your advantage would be there are not a lot of people who apply from Southern Africa. So I would target round 1. And I remember a lot of people would tell me, apply round 1, or especially maybe your score is shaky. I think round 1 is better. Or you've tried your best, okay, maybe, I don't know, I don't want to put a score out there. But maybe you're applying to a school where you have to have a 700 and you have a 650 or 7, I'm just giving out numbers. Please don't take me seriously. But what I'm saying is, apply early, round 1. But I applied in round 2, and I was put on a wait list, and I ended up, getting in the next year, for early decision. And as Tumi said, there was ample time for negotiating for funding and stuff.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that. Yeah, so another thing is let's talk about the costs of this whole application process, right? Not to scare anyone, but you were able to do it. I feel like it's not supposed to be scary. Yeah, so what are some of those costs that you'd have to incur throughout this application process, maybe up until you get in? Because maybe is there a way, are there ways to probably reduce the costs of certain things or get it waived or anything like that? To me, I think you can go first.
So this is a part that I wasn't prepared for. The costs add up, and some of them are things you're unaware of until they actually come up. So then I think there's costs obviously for preparing for your test. I got a subscription with Magoosh. I probably got a 6-month subscription or something. Because that's a preparation sort of platform where you can go through some technical material and do practice tests. Oh my goodness, I can't remember how much that was, but that was a couple of $100. And then there's the actual costs of the test itself, because you have to pay each time you take this test. But then with application fees, I'd say always attend webinars, because some schools will offer you an exemption or a waiver rather on the application fee if you've attended 2 webinars or whatever the case may be. And I remember one school waived my application just based on the region I was applying for, or from rather. But then I think the one thing we don't do well is ask. People from Southern, and maybe it's a Southern African thing, you should reach out to the school and ask, can I get a waiver on this test fee, or not test fee, sorry, application fee.
Yeah.
Yeah, so definitely ask. And then even after admissions, there's a deposit that you need to pay to secure your spot. And that comes before you've received your funding, whether it's scholarship or loans or whatever. So that's something you need to save up for. And, you should check the websites of all these schools you're applying to get a sense of like what their specific deposit is, because you can't secure your spot without that. Then there's the visa cost. And there's everything you need to do to secure your visa. So like there's,
Yeah.
I can't remember how much it was, but you have to pay for your application. I know with some countries, like some people have to get consultants to help them with the process. So you need to pay for that. So it's a lot. There are a lot of costs. Then there's just the admin costs of moving to another country. So like one thing that I didn't know about was vaccinations. You're gonna have to take vaccinations based on like your school requirements and stuff, and those are quite expensive. And I decided to take all these vaccinations at home before I moved to school. And it was a pretty penny because you're taking like upwards of like, I don't know, probably like 10 injections or something. I can't remember, but it was quite a bit. So that's also like an additional cost. Let's see, what else? Oh, and then there's probably like your housing. So before you even start school, before you start school and before your funding kicks in, you're going to have to pay for housing because usually international students come a little bit early to have their own, or at Darden anyway, we come a bit early to have our own orientation before orientation starts with the broader group. So that's also another cost you're going to have to think about. And then obviously transport costs to get to wherever you need to be.
Yeah.
There's quite a few, but I mean, I know it sounds daunting. I'm making it sound horrible.
I mean, it's doable, right?
It is. It's so doable. It definitely is doable. It's a bit of an investment, but it definitely is worth it. Like I wouldn't change this decision.
All right. Thank you very much for sharing. Yes, so Rumbi, in terms of funding and scholarship for tuition, what are the options available, right? What do people need to look out for in the application to be able to secure maybe just enough funding for the MBA program?
Okay, so I can just speak on Colombia. I think so. For me, I got I think half of total cost of attendance, so which was pretty good for me. I wish I had pushed, asked for more because when was it? After there was a group chat for all Africans that was created on WhatsApp, and people like, oh, they just keep on going to ask for more. But I was just like, oh my gosh, thank you. And yeah, and I wish I'd just keep going to ask. So I think also if you have a great GMAT, I think that's where the GMAT score and maybe the GRE comes in. I didn't have one, so I can't speak on that. If you have that, then you could get maybe what's the word, total tuition scholarship. So some people got the tuition and then they just cover their living costs. Some people also got what's the word, I'm not forgetting, like there's
the graduate
sorry, I'm forgetting the what,
is it the graduate assistantship?
No, not that, but I was thinking in terms of like scholarships from like Southern Africa. There's one, maybe to me, you know it. I'm forgetting the name of but they were founders of First Rand. First Rand. It's linked to First Rand because I know a friend of mine got that. I can send the link later. Yeah, you could also get a scholarship with that. I don't think there are a lot of like scholarships from the African continent, but Tumi can share on that. But I think that's why it's important to apply earlier, because like I know there are people who probably had better scores than me, but they applied maybe second round, third round, and they didn't get as much money as I got.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, so Tumi, do you want to add anything to that?
There's another scholarship. I just can't remember what it's called, but I think they do like the top 10 Financial Times schools.
Oh, okay.
I'm so sorry. I can't remember the name right now. I didn't get that, obviously, but so there are some options. But I think for me, what Rumbi said is so important. Don't be afraid to ask for more money. Like that's also something that I didn't do, and I regret that. So you can actually ask.
Okay.
I mean, the worst thing they could do is say no.
Right. Yeah.
I was good. Oh, sorry. I forgot what I was also using another offer. So a lot of people will say, hey, I'm like, we'll be like, oh, I got into LBS, but I want to come to Colombia. And be like, okay, we'll give you this amount. Or yeah, so I would say that's the importance of having like several options.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's important also. Thank you for sharing. So yeah, let's touch on now we're done with, so there's someone who is done with the applications, putting in the application and all, and they've been invited for an interview, right? From your point of view, what are some of the strategies and some things they need to do to prepare for the interview for specific schools? Just give insights into how you were able to navigate that part of the whole process, the interviewing. Were there like challenges based on maybe accent or the way you communicate with people, the way you address them, or just anything around interviewing generally? Yeah, anyone. Okay.
I think you need to, this is where community also comes in again. It's so important because some schools just have like a one-on-one interview that feels like probably the way a job interview would feel, whereas other schools have like standardized process. Like Wharton has like this group discussion type setup, and for that, you can't just walk into that and like think you're going to do well. There's a lot of prep work you need to do in terms of like getting used to the style, so like practicing.
Yeah.
But what I've found is that like with some of these schools, like they'll have like an African Students Association. I know Wharton does that, where that association will like set up prep sessions, like quite a lot, like quite a few prep sessions for everyone to like jump on and practice how to run this interview. But also, I know students at my school will help people, like give them mock interviews beforehand, just so that people can get used to, because it's a very different style. Like that whole self-promotion is new, so you need to practice that and practice how to do it right.
Yeah.
So things like that, you need to lean on a community to help you prep for that. And that's what I did as well.
Okay. Yeah, excellent. Thank you for that. Yeah, Rumbi, do you want to add anything to that? The interviewing process. How was it like for you?
So I generally hate interviews. So and I got waitlisted, and I think it was because of my interview. I just did not have, well, that's my thinking. I just did not have a rapport with the person who interviewed me. I think what I would say, because I have a friend who was interviewed by the same person, and then because I didn't know this at that time, like researching your interviewer, go on LinkedIn, try to find like common what things in common. Like,
Yeah.
okay, maybe they like orchestra. You can even Google them. Like, oh, maybe they like ballet or whatever, or do you like ballet as well? Then you can, oh, I saw this, blah, blah, blah. Like, in an interview, they must, make sure that the interviewer talks, because people like talking about themselves. So let them talk and talk and talk, like a lot of small talk. Believe me, that's very important. As Tumi said, self-promotion, just being confident, like knowing your resume, knowing your why you want to go to that specific school, show that you've researched, drop names. It's not like they'll go and say, oh, like, do you know this person? Because I mean, the schools are big, right? So if you've spoken to someone, I've spoken to this person, or it shows that you've done your research. Have questions ready for them, and thank you notes. Send a thank you notes in like 48 hours. Well, I'll speak for Colombia. Send a thank you note within 48 hours after the interview. Also stating what you learned from that person. I think with Colombia, usually they would, like the person that they were using for, I think the continent at that time was based on the African. There were a few people based on that, like they could be Nigeria or wherever, but that specific person was in Southern Africa. What else? Yeah, for now, that's all that I have. I'm losing my train of thought. But if I think I forgot what I wanted to say about the interview, but yeah, really knowing your interviewer, and going on LinkedIn and stuff. And yes, like for example, Colombia as well. Like we have the Africa Business Club. They also help out with prospective students, and I guess like having a community, as Tumi said, like to practice as much as you can. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for sharing. So practice, very important, and do your research. Just try to know what method of interviewing each school does. Is it just is there a pattern? Is there like a set of questions they're going to ask you so you can prepare towards that? So yeah, very important. And also research. I mean, try to find your interviewer, because I think many schools will send you the names of the person you would interview with, right? So yeah, sorry. The lights just went off. Okay. Yeah, so minutes. Yeah, so thank you thank you for that. So about the visa process, to me, can you just touch on, okay, now you've gotten your admission, what happens from there? Is there anything you still need to do with your school? Do you just immediately go to your country's website and start? What's the process like? And what's the experience with South Africa, like from your own experience?
I think after admissions, you'll work on the school because there's like a document called an I-20. Well, as far as I can remember, like it feels like a blur, but like there's a
Yeah.
document called an I-20 which says, yes, you are a student in our school, and this is how you're funding your studies, and this is how much you need for your studies, and where those sources of income or sources of funding are coming from. And the school will supply you with that, so that's fine. But then it's good to go onto the website, onto the embassy's website to find out like what you need to apply. So you do your online application, you submit things like bank statements. What else do they want? Like proof of address, like a lot of like personal information.
Yeah.
And then you book an interview and you go in for your visa interview. So I think we're lucky that the visa process in South Africa is not too complicated. I think I booked and got an appointment in like the next week or something. Went in, submitted all my documents, and they asked me a few questions around around why I'm going to the US, what's my plans post MBA, things like that. So it was pretty easy. Like I must admit, I think we're fortunate that like our
Mm.
process isn't complex. So you won't necessarily need like, I don't know, an advisor or anything like that. So that process is pretty simple and quick. Once you have like your I-20 and your school documents, you're good.
Oh, that's good to hear. Um, yeah, so Rumbi, how was your experience with the visa process? What country did you get that from?
So I applied from South Africa
Oh,
because
okay.
I stayed, so definitely the same experience as to me. It was very straightforward. I think because I'm not South African, I had
Mm.
to go in with my like proof of permanent residence and my contract that I was working in South Africa. But it was pretty straightforward. I got to where they interview you, just basic. They never asked me for proof actually for anything. They just said, okay, what are you going to do? How are you funding it?
Mm-hmm.
What are your plans after? And that was that. So I think it's very smooth. I know in them it could be different. I know South Africa
Yeah.
is a much easier process than them from my friends who applied from Zimbabwe. I think with that, like some people have like literally have to practice like questions and go with, show your proof that, okay, this is what I'm going to, like how I'm going to fund it and stuff. But I feel South Africa is actually much easier that if you're in Zim, maybe go to South Africa. I know one person who did that.
Hmm. Okay, thank you for sharing. I mean, it's good to hear that the process is smooth with South Africa. So for whatever country you're trying to get your visa from, just reach out to people. Like they mentioned, feel free, like don't hesitate to ask questions, right? When necessary, reach out to people, ask them your questions. Yes, so the next yeah, so now that you're ready to go, what are some of the preparations you have to put in place? Do you try to get maybe your housing preparation done from before you travel? Is it afterwards? Are there still some maybe documentations, just the whole preparation? Do you have to travel here and there to say goodbye to your family? What did you have to do in terms of preparing to resume to school? Um, yeah, I think you can go first, Rumbi.
Yeah, I think for me, I quit my job in May. And then I was starting in August. So I went to Zimbabwe. I was with my family. I wish I had rested. I don't know what other stuff. Like I was just doing a lot of things. And I think first year was really hectic, as Tumi said. I wasn't prepared for that. Like just mentally, like going back to school. I started at 35. So it was just a lot for me. And I wish I had rested more. And then in terms of accommodation, once you get in, if you're an international student at Columbia, they'll send you like an option to ask if you want to stay in school housing. So I chose school housing. And for whatever school that you go to, I think that's an easier option if it's available, because I think because of the security deposits here in the US, like you probably have to pay like 3 times of your salary or something crazy like that. Or like in New York, where it's not hard to, but it's just, yeah, for you to get accommodation. I'll just sort it out. I'll just go into school housing. It was much cheaper as well. I know that like in terms of, I think what I didn't really think about was, and I don't know if I should have done it, like bringing stuff like bedding from South Africa, because when I got here, man, everything is expensive. So buying all those things, like buying, sheets, buying a duvet, is those things I didn't think about that. And so I would advise like having a checklist, like really literally sitting down, like, okay, what am I going to need? Do I need to, thank God everything was my apartment was fully furnished. So I chose that because I didn't want the headache of like buying a bed or whatever. So, I believe in just making your life, easier and stuff, because you're coming to a new country. Maybe you've been here, even if you've visited, like going to a store and finding a store and getting a bed is different, just like, coming as a tourist. So yeah, thinking about all those things and going back to what Tumi was saying in terms of costs, like you have to think about, okay, your initial cost. I think I spent probably like 3,000 just like to set myself up. So just having that in mind and preparing yourself.
All right, thank you for that. So Tumi, briefly, can you just give us an overview of, some of the things you had to prepare, and yeah, just tips on that end too.
So I think I worked up until like Friday, and I was leaving the country the next Tuesday.
Oh wow.
That was like, you need to save money. Like I was trying to make sure I have enough money. So that probably wasn't a good idea. Because like first year is intense. Like you really need to rest. You need to spend time with your family. You need to like eat your food. Like just eat a lot of food from home, like every day. Eat all the things you're not gonna find, especially with like Southern African food. Like there are things you're not gonna find, things that are a bit more difficult to source. So definitely do that. And then take care of all your admin early. I think I moved out of my house way too late. Like all of that sort of admin, I did like really late. So it was a bit crazy towards the end. And with housing, I did the same thing as Rumbi. I went and I found out where's the school housing. It's cheaper. It's fully furnished. I didn't want to like spend money on beds and like all these things because the costs add up, right? So, but the only thing I want to mention about school housing, it can be very competitive to secure school housing. So you need to check the deadlines and see like when's the application opening. I remember for my school housing, it was probably unnecessary, but like literally at midnight on the day the application opened, I was on that website applying for school housing. So, you need to know those things about like, is that what I need to do? Is it not what I need to do? So you need to do that. And you need to join all the groups, right? All the African groups. Like for instance, just going back to the visa conversation, like rather ask people who've done it before, like how they did it, and they can tell you about which housing works, which one's too expensive, and like things like that. So you definitely need to talk. You need to talk to your people who are in first year already, for sure. So don't be shy. Don't be shy to ask people.
Right, ask questions. All right, thank you for that. And so, speaking of asking questions, right? So outside a community like Lynn, were there other resources or places you were able to get people or a community to ask, those schools, do they have communities? And are there places, maybe websites like GMAT Club or just other resources that you can mention or talk about? To me, maybe you can touch on that too.
So I had my lane mentor who I asked a lot of questions. And he was already in the community, right? In terms of the African community. So obviously I got plugged into people that way. And also there's like with our school, like the African club, the African Business Club will reach out to you and make sure that like you have people. So they allocated me a mentor who was from South Africa. So at least he understood sort of like the things that I was dealing with. And I had a mentor for that, a mentor for pre-MBA recruiting. So like our African Business Club is pretty like on top of things when it comes to that sort of thing. So there's a WhatsApp group. There are like lots of WhatsApp groups. There's like a general WhatsApp group, a visa WhatsApp group. Like, there's a lot of support basically within our community to begin with. So that's pretty cool. So I leaned on them a lot.
Okay, that's good to hear. So Rumbi, do you want to touch on that very briefly? Because of time. Let's just
I was part of the young MBA. Sorry, I'm forgetting the full name, but I think they don't have that group anymore. It's not active. So that was very helpful at that point. And also the GMAT club. But I think because I knew a lot of Zimbabweans who had done their MBAs and stuff who are in New York, it was much easier for me just to ask questions.
Okay.
So yeah. And then also the African Business Club here at Columbia, once I got in, they were very helpful as well.
All right.
Yeah, and I also spoke to Rumbi. I remember we had like a call for like over an hour.
Oh, really?
before I left home. I had questions.
Oh, wow. That's good to hear.
I had a lot of questions.
Thank you, Rumbi. All right. Yeah, so I think my last question would be, so generally with the application and the whole process, what's one advice you can give? Like if you had to give just one advice, what would that be? And also, if there's one thing I feel like you've touched on that a lot already, one thing you think you would have done differently, what's that one thing also? So one advice generally and one thing you think you would have done differently. So I think you can go first. Anyone can go first.
Okay, I'll go. One thing I wish I'd done differently. Okay, it's two things. Sorry, it's two things. I wish I'd applied earlier and I wish I'd negotiated harder. That's sort of like the one thing that I would do differently. What else? Advice. I think advice is don't do it by yourself. Like literally, you're not going to do it on your own. Like trust me, I thought I was a great writer, and when my essays were edited, it proved otherwise. So don't do it by yourself. Reach out to people to help you.
Yeah, definitely. All right, Rumbi.
Yeah, I think I should have done more research and just also like talk to as many people as I can, like reach out to people, but even through LinkedIn, and especially when you get an offer, right? Like change that heading to say incoming MBA candidates, whatever. Reach out to people, start talking about networking, recruiting, and stuff. Even if you don't know exactly what you want to do, talk to people. Also, I think I would say that just advice, well, it's the same as advice would be do your research even about immigration. So I just thought, okay, in order for you to get a green card, you have to do the H-1B and, a firm sponsors you. I was surprised when I came like last year, in my first year after the summer, one guy actually from Nigeria who was in the same class as me telling me that he applied for a green card because if you get an MBA, you have an advanced degree, so you can actually apply for a green card. Oh. And I started talking to several people who were doing it, and these guys had not graduated yet. So it's those things like research, think through those things about immigration and stuff. Like, okay, can I get a green card? What are the ways to do it? Go on the website. Like I was even scared to go on the website because everyone, from Southern Africa, to be fair, was like, oh, you need an H-1B. And as I said before, like I feel like a lot of people in West Africa know more information. So expand your network even within the African community. And yeah, just reach out and ask questions.
Oh, all right. Nice one. Thank you very much. We're actually out of time. We have like 2 minutes more, but do you have like 5-10 minutes to spare? So we'll take a few questions. Is that fine? Rumbi, to me. All right. Thank you very much. Okay. So everyone, thanks for staying till now. If you have questions, please feel free to drop it now. We have just a few minutes. Okay, so I think there's one question. Ebon, please, if you can help me with any question. just bring it forward, south. If you can rewrite your question, please. Or just raise your hand, like indicates raising of hand if you want to speak. Okay, Setu, I think you can unmute yourself. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the time. Dumi, we've spoken on WhatsApp, but I think it's the first time that I'm seeing you like physically. I'll be very quick. Thank you for the time. My question is just around what you mentioned about GRE waivers. So there are a couple of schools that I'm applying to now. I'm doing like quite a lot in round one and others in round two simply because of time. But more schools have GRE waivers now than last year. So I just wanted to know that if I apply for GRE waivers everywhere where I can, because I didn't get like even the median range score for like my target schools, like, and I just don't have time to rewrite this exam anymore. This is like, I've written it 5 times. So should I apply for GRE waivers everywhere that it's available? Because I've heard some people talking about how the GRE is considered for scholarships at both schools. So I guess I'd be asking for both Darden and Columbia. Yeah, thank you.
So I don't know, I don't think I'm a good example for it because I got a waiver and no money. So I don't think I'm a good person for that. But I don't know. As far as I know, it shouldn't affect you, but I don't know. I don't know if Rumbi has other insights.
Sorry, was the question that like you're applying for a waiver and you've written it 5 times?
Yeah, I'm applying for a waiver and I'm trying to figure out if applying for the waiver and getting it will be a disadvantage for getting additional funding, or should I just use my score? I mean, I got a 307, which is really not like within the middle at all. It's still quite far. So yeah, but I know that once you submit a school can't retract it or consider you for a waiver. So that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Well, I can just speak on Columbia. To be honest, I wrote the executive assessment. So if you're planning to apply to Columbia, try that because that's not. I think when I reached out to them, they said you only need a score that's above 150, and I got 154. And then the advantage then if you apply in the early round or whatever, they don't really look at the score. There are specific scholarships for merit. Or for if you have a cheaper grade, you must score. But then they're also like financial aid. So it's just about how you like your essay, like you just have to tell them that, hey, we are from Africa, we don't earn US dollars, we probably have black text. Like I wrote everything. So like, yeah, no, seriously. Like you have to write that because it's not something that they're familiar with. Because most people, you'll find that like 90% of the people have their parents paying. So yeah, I would try the executive assessment. But if it's a waiver, take the waiver because the school is offering it.
Thanks a lot.
Okay. Thank you for that. So someone is asking, Sumi and Rumbi, if you were a reapplicant at any of the schools you applied to, like did you apply more than once in any of the schools? And there's no specific question, but I guess the person wants to know any tips for reapplicants, basically. So if you were a reapplicant, maybe you can just share your experience, yeah.
So I was a reapplicant to Columbia. I think what I did differently, so what I did differently is one, I did get a consultant to help me out with like because if you go back to the school and say, hey, what should I improve? They can't give you the feedback. Look at it, have someone else, maybe an alarm to look at it as well. It could be your score, it could be your story, like how you are articulating your goals. Like some people say, like what I was saying about the PE story, that, oh, I want to come and do PE. Even if you're doing it from the African continent, just say, I want to do investment banking.
and then, or you do PE or do consulting and then whatever it is. So your goals should be practical. And then the other thing is I started like networking, like attending events, showing interest. It depends with the school. Really showing that, reaching out to admissions, like going, for the information sessions, what was now during COVID, attending even the Africa Business Conference, which was on virtual.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. Yes, so to me, someone is asking, I'm applying to Darden and I would like to recruit for investment banking. What should I do to stand out in the application? Any tips?
The application for Darden itself?
Yes.
Okay.
Applying
I
for
think
investment, recruiting for investment banking.
I think during my application process for Darden itself, I think it's always really important to sit down and think about what you have achieved and highlighting those things. Because like sometimes you think it's ordinary, everyday things, but these are actually like real achievements. So I think highlighting that, and like Rumbi said, making your story or your goals very practical and attainable is also like a big thing. And also being clear on your why, right? You can't just do investment banking because you want to move to New York, or I don't know. I can't think of a better example, but like, that's not a good enough reason to want to do banking. So showing that you're motivated, you understand your why, you understand even if you don't know exactly, but you understand what it could look like and what the rest of your career could look like, which is going to change, right? That's always going to change. But like showing that you do know what you're getting into would probably be good.
Yeah.
And also going through your story with someone else who's probably done banking and gone into Darden and done banking is very important as well. Then within banking itself for recruiting, same story. Your why needs to be very clear.
Yeah.
And then, you're going to get to a point where there's technicals, but before you even get to technicals, making sure that like during the networking phase of things, you're asking people like smart questions. So as you know, it's not things like, oh, why did you do banking? It's like, this is what I understand about banking, but I want more information about this specific aspect of your job, So I think that's probably important.
All right. Thank you very much for sharing. So I'm trying to go really fast. Yeah, so the next question is to Rumbi. Do you recommend a 1-year MBA over a 2-year traditional MBA, considering you want to work in the US post-qualification? And also you have a professional experience outside the US, Zimbabwe to be specific.
Yeah, so with that, I'm biased because I did a 2-year MBA thing. I would advise on a 2-year MBA because honestly, it depends, I would say. I think there are people who have done executive MBAs and were successful. Well, even I can't speak on the 1-year in the US. I think most of that would be in Europe, right? I can't think of how you're going to do the core classes and then recruit and then do the electives in 1 year. Like it just doesn't, I don't know. It depends. But I think the advantage of a 2-year one is you do the recruiting, you have the option of doing the summer. You can actually test it out and see, hey, maybe I want to do consulting, whatever. You realize you don't like it, you can re-recruit again, right? You can do what do you call it? Depending on the school, but like Columbia being in New York, you can do, I think now it's everywhere because of this virtual working, you can do internships, like in-semester internships. And sometimes you're able to actually convert them into full-time. You can earn money because
So I highly recommend 2 years. Also, in the US, even, they only look at US experience, to be blunt. So even if you have, I don't know, 12 years, like I came in with 10 years of experience, honestly, they don't really look at that. I think when you start working, that's when they're like, oh, recognize, like, okay, actually she's good or whatever. So they won't really know the companies and stuff. And what Tumi said, like, they wouldn't know what ABSA is. Right. So to have even those 3 months at a bank or consulting, whatever firm, is really important. So I would say to go for the 2-year.
All right. Thank you very much. So let me quickly touch on some of the things the Lane community has to offer. So we have several resources available. Lane has a podcast which you can find on Spotify and other podcast streaming platforms. So we've answered several questions like how do you define your reasons for attending MBA, your why, just several questions around that you might have about the MBA application process. So please do well to listen to the podcast, check out our YouTube, City of Lane, our Instagram, just everywhere, City of Lane, search for the name, you find us. Yeah, and also we've dropped links on how you can join the community to be a great thing for you to do that. And if you are not applying this year also, there's a general community for you to join. Just go to our Instagram, City of Lane, the bio, there's a link where you can find all of those things. Yeah, so thank you very much. We have 2 hands still raised up for questions, but we don't have time anymore. But with your permission, should we take one or two, those 2 people?
Yeah, let's take the 2.
All right. Yeah, so please unmute yourself, Adim Chinobi.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate this forum. This is my first time here.
You're
Quite
welcome.
educative. Yeah. Actually, I'm having a challenge with transcript evaluation. You know, where a particular school will tell you to get your transcript evaluated maybe with a word education system before sending to them and all that, and then maybe you're running out of time. So is there a kind of alternative to that where you can maybe email the school, tell them that probably the evaluated form of the transcript will come maybe later during the admission process, where you submit what you have, probably as a student copy, to help you secure an admission with your school? Thank you.
Okay. To be sure of what your question is, so you're saying that the school requires the evaluated transcript, right? So you want to know if you can submit your student copy pending when you get that done.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So let's take the 2 questions so we'll respond together. I, Eddington, please unmute yourself. Hello, Eddington, we can't hear you if you're speaking. Okay, so I think we should go ahead to answer the last question. What do you think? What are your thoughts?
This isn't a challenge I faced during my process, but like if I was facing this challenge, because I think it's going to be very difficult for them to just take your student copy as is, right? But I think I'd ask though. I'd definitely like reach out to the school and say, this is the challenge that I'm having. And I could get you the evaluated transcript by whatever deadline and send them proof of like, that process has kicked off, and ask them if that's okay. Because I don't know. I think that's the best
Right.
advice I can give, because I'm not sure what else you'd
I
be
mean,
able to
the
do.
best advice is probably to just reach out to the school to find out if they can accept it. Just email them. Yeah, I think that's the best. So, Editing, are you with us?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Okay, yes,
Yeah.
we can.
Oh, okay. Confirm you can hear me now. But I think my
Much
yeah,
better.
okay. Sorry. So my issue is like this. So I'm having a challenge. Number one, my degree class. Yeah, I had a 2-2. So it's one of those things that's actually lowering my confidence to apply. Number two, I do have some remote experience with American companies. I think it's close to 2 years. Yeah, it's close to 2 years now. And then some local banking institution within Zimbabwe. So my option is like this. I'd like to know whether my grades qualification, like my 2-2 degree class, will actually lower my chances of actually getting a good school into consulting. That's the first question. And then the second question is like this. So I would like to actually do the CA program, like pivoting into audit, with a big four firm so that I increase my chances. So then the follow-up question becomes, is it then necessary for me to do the 3A audit articles at a big four firm if I want to increase my chances of getting a placement at a good school? Or I can just apply with my, with my 2 degree class? That's my question. Thank you.
All right. So there's okay. Rumbi, I think you
I
can.
didn't get the first part.
Okay, so the first part, he mentioned that he had a 2-2 from, I think, his undergraduate degree. He wants to know if that's going to influence his application in a negative way. And did you get the second part? Because I actually did not get.
The second part was that he has worked for American companies remotely and financial institution in Zimbabwe, and he's asking if the CA would help.
Yes, exactly.
The train, yeah.
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct. Whether the CA will actually help me to get like the lower degree class that I had in undergrad.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thought, yeah.
So I would say that the focus on the reason why we write, well, the school say, they say write the standardized test is because we're coming from all over the world with different, they have to have a standardized way to evaluate everyone. So focus on the standardized test, the GRE and the GMAT, and ensure that you pass those. Because if you have, let's say, a 700 or whatever, to be honest, I don't think anyone will look at your undergrad and say, oh, but he didn't make it here, like he got 700. In terms of the CA, I would not go through that route because I don't think it matters as well. Like what matters is they'll look at your, they'll look at your work experience. It's how you're going to frame it. Since you've worked for American companies, that's great. They will look at your standardized tests. So I'm not sure how many years of experience you have, but I would not do it if you want to do if to say, okay, let me wait for 3 years and then do the CA. Honestly, even now, to be honest, the CA doesn't help me in any way because now the MBA is like the main qualification. They don't really recognize. I mean, it's great because, we understand accounting and finance and stuff, but it doesn't really help. So I would not even focus on that. What I also do is, you talked about consulting. They will look again, they'll look at you when you start recruiting, right? The good thing about coming to these schools, they won't even ask you some of those questions. They'll just it's really brand based in terms of, oh, she goes to Darden or she goes to Columbia. They won't look at all that, like, oh, so you did the CA or you have whatever. I mean, it's about how you articulate it to your interviewer as you go through the process, and you'll be taught that. So I would not even worry about that. I would worry about getting into the school.
All right. That's great. Thank you very much, Tumi and Rumbi. You've been very helpful. I believe, we got a lot from this session. Very, very useful. We appreciate you. And thanks for the overtime, All right. Thanks everyone for joining. So we've come to the end of this session. I hope that you filled the attendance form and also you've joined the community if you are not already. All right. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Bye, everyone.